here on this Wednesday, and we're talking education. Standardized Education, Moving America to the Right, is a new book by Arthur Lieber. He's our guest today. And Arthur, as an educator, let me just toss this at you. I've got a seventh grader, my wife and I do, and I was chatting with him the other day, and I just asked him, what have you been studying in social studies? And he said, well, we're getting ready to start a new thing. And he talks like the typical 12-year-old. We got a new topic coming up. And I said, well, what did you just finish? And he said, we were studying Muslims. And it's difficult to pull a lot of information from a 12-year-old. But I did glean enough to find that they'd studied ancient Muslim culture and also modern Muslim culture. And in your mind, is that something? Because I would consider that I think that's a good topic. Obviously, to be studying now, or in conflict with much of the Muslim world to one degree or another, and to better understand them and for them to understand us. It makes sense for us to learn about each other. But on an issue like that, how should our schools approach it, and how should it be taught?
Well, I'm glad to hear that your son is studying about Muslims. And one proposal that I have in the book is what we call the news school, where basically you learn social studies or history backwards. You start with the here and now, and you learn the significance of let's say the Muslim religion, the culture associated with it, the political outcomes from it, if that's the case. And then you go back and look at the roots from that. I think that what you really have to do is to try to make things meaningful. I was asked last spring, well, when Osama bin Laden was killed, was it a teachable moment? And I thought, yeah, it was really a teachable moment, but most social studies teachers aren't going to have an opportunity to do that because it's not in their curriculum. Something that happened in 2011, it's going to be a number of years before it ever is in their textbooks. I had an interesting experience a couple of weeks ago with our nonprofit. We had journalists here in St. Louis who have been covering international stories, and we had a terrific woman who's been reporting from Afghanistan for 10 years. And we were at a school, and she just really wowed the kids. And they wanted to learn more and more about Afghanistan, about the Muslim religion, about women in Afghanistan. And when she was done, then the teacher turns to me and she says, now I've got to go back to teaching about the 1500s. Who wants that? And so I think people have a lot of curiosity and a lot of interest, and we've got to go where that is, and that tends to be more in the present.
Well, that's an interesting way that I'd never thought about that as far as how to teach history. Start now and go back. I mean, that's how we look back at history. We look from now to Vietnam, if we're talking war. Maybe we compare our current conflicts to the Vietnam conflict, and then to World War II. And we look back that way rather than starting at the so-called beginning, way back when we can't really relate to a whole lot that was real then. Start now and go backwards and see that way how things progressed over the years. Interesting idea.
Yeah, and Joe, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, going to high school in the 1960s, I hungered for, history about the Depression and about World War II. And we never got to it, and I don't think that was unusual. I don't know if you had an experience where you got up to the current times, or whether there was rather recent history, and that just wasn't part of what was covered.
No, it really wasn't. We studied much older history, and in Western history primarily, but much older. We never got to, I don't even think, the 20th century. Maybe some did if they read The Great Gatsby, that type of thing.
A true cross section of the 20th century, right?
Yeah. I gained most of my knowledge of the Second World War, for instance, from war movies. I grew up in that that period when there were a lot of those coming out. They just came out, the Battle of Britain and other fictional movies and Patton and those types of films.
We can thank Tom Hanks for teaching us a great deal.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about teaching compassion and social justice in our schools, and I guess how could that be done better?
Well, I think to a large extent it is the way in which the teachers and the administrators operate. I mean, we all make mistakes. Sometimes there are policies of zero tolerance, and if you have someone who's been a terrific student, and let's say one day they're caught smoking marijuana at school, and they're expelled. They're not given any leeway. I'm not suggesting a student smoke the marijuana, but what I'm saying is that when that happens, rather than just coming down very harshly, there's probably a reason behind that. It might be that there's difficulties going on at home. It might be as simple as curiosity. Whatever it is, it's part of a learning experience. And I think, we've got to deal with a couple of factors. One is what's best for the student, and two is can we retain certain standards within the school. But zero tolerance is just a simple way out. And when administrators and teachers are operating that way, it's my way or the highway, that's the antithesis of compassion.
Well, and do you think maybe the emphasis on standardized testing, on reading, writing, English, science, that these kinds of tests, the emphasis that that it forces upon teachers, is that kind of maybe seen as a tool by some to crowd out issues like this?
I think there's been more and more of that, and more schools where there is very little teaching of social studies, very little teaching of science. I've had experiences also with students who have been involved in programs with our nonprofit where we've been doing urban studies and getting out in the community. And we'll have opportunities for them to write newspaper articles to be published online and in our community. And I'll ask students if they can do it, and they'll say to me, I have no idea how to do it. I know how to do that. If you want me to write a paper for an AP class, I know how to do that. But I don't know how to write in a way that people will really understand what I'm talking about. And, again, the students have been so programmed to be good AP test takers, but and then we see it also in college when you have, so many academic papers, and then you ask someone, just, write something for me, giving the basic explanation. And it's like, they have to relearn that or unlearn so much of the other things that's been forced upon them.
Yeah, and just, you kind of touched on something that kind of light bulb went off with talking about, well, for instance, government studies. And what conservatives, and we've got laws in place that mandate the teaching of the Constitution and mandate the teaching of our system of government, but no mandates that say we should study many forms of government and maybe all forms of world government and get an idea of what's working, what's not, what has worked and what hasn't, and that get kids to think critically about our form of government and hold it up against others.
I think that's so true, and someone who really kind of reflects the other point of view is Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, who says he has no interest whatsoever with a legal case in looking at any law which exists in any other country. And I recognize that he has a role to interpret the Constitution. But the fact that, the idea that we can't learn from what's going on in other countries, be it in their judicial system or, let's just say, if you think in terms of the gridlock that we have in this country between the president and Congress, that wouldn't happen in the United Kingdom. It wouldn't happen in a lot of other countries where you've got a parliamentary system. And those are more designed to make things work rather than to obstruct. And I just don't think that students get the opportunity, as you pointed out so well, to even learn that there are other ways to structure government so that we can have outcomes which are different and ideally solve some problems.
Yeah, it's a little anecdote, but a long time ago I used to date a girl who said that she was, I don't know, sophomore or junior in high school before she actually realized that the President of the United States wasn't the President of the whole world. And I think there are some that would like that to be the lesson number one for kids. But well, Arthur, it's great talking to you again. The book, once again, Standardized Education: Moving America to the Right. It's not long. It's a pretty quick read, an easy read, and very interesting. And I think it's available on Amazon and elsewhere.
It is indeed. And Joe, I appreciate it.